Stories. And today I have my special guest. He is a franchise founder as well as a CEO, none other than Mr. Dave Pazgan.
Hey there, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm fabulous and excellent, Mr. Dave, and welcome to Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. So my name is Dave Pazgan. I'm the founder and co-founder of a company called Liftology. I've got about 15 years of experience in franchising and in specifically the franchising of the access and mobility space. I started a different company with some co-founders in 2008 called 101 Mobility. We started that company and franchised it in 2010, and that company went on to become one of the biggest franchise operators in our industry in the U.S. And now I'm back to do it again with a company called Liftology. What Liftology does is we sell and install access and mobility equipment, things like stair lifts, wheelchair ramps, home elevators, and other equipment for people to be able to navigate their homes and communities safely as they get older. So our primary customer base are seniors that are desiring to age in place, meaning that they want to stay in their home as long as they can. And we provide equipment that helps them do that.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Dave. Thank you. And today let's talk about how to select the right franchise. Let's start
Sure.
with the foundational truth. Franchise is a marriage, not a date. Beyond the capital and credit scores, what are the critical, often overlooked questions someone must ask themselves about their personality, risk tolerance, and desired lifestyle before ever looking at a brand?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different franchises out there. I'll say that first, right? So there's different types and of fits and business models and ownership, I guess, responsibilities. And so if you're thinking about franchising, it's not a bad idea to work with a consultant. There are a lot of good consultants out there that will help you evaluate what you're looking for, what your goals are, what kind of feels right to you in terms of industry and type of business that may make sense for you in your situation. And then they can help you kind of make a good selection there. So we do work with a lot of consultants that help us find franchise owners and send them our direction if they think all of those things could be a good fit for us and a good match as a franchisor and a franchisee. Specifically for Liftology, we have a very clear idea of what we're looking for. So first off, I'll say that our franchise company and program is really suitable only for people that are looking to do it full time. So there's a lot of discussion in franchising about, getting passive income streams or semi-passive, semi-absentee type of business models. We are not that. So we're looking for owners that are going to jump in with both feet. They're going to invest fully in the business, both not just their, financial resources, but they're also going to invest, their full-time effort in growing the company. And we think it's worth it, right? Our business scales up really nicely, tends to be a really high revenue to investment ratio. It's not a big, for most people, the investment for a Liftology franchise is between 250 and 300,000. And these businesses scale up pretty nicely from there. So we're looking for owners that are willing to commit the time, and not just, the time, but also make the effort to become experts at what we do. Because that expertise will lead to more business over time. If you're able to develop your reputation in your local market as the go-to resource for this kind of equipment, then that just leads to more business. And so that only happens for the owners who are investing in educating themselves and becoming the local expert for stair lifts and ramps in their market. So that's a big part of what we look for. Another thing we look for are relationship development skills. A lot of the way that we develop business for our company and for our franchise locations are through local relationships. We get a lot of referrals from places like hospitals, rehab centers, area agencies on aging. There's a variety of different places where we can get referrals for people who need the equipment that we offer. And that really only happens when that franchise owner is out developing those relationships, not afraid to get out from behind the desk, not afraid to go knock on doors and talk to people and basically tell our story and talk about the various solutions that we provide. Because many of these, take hospitals, for example, every day they're discharging people from those hospitals. And in many cases, those folks are going home to a different situation from when they came in. They may now be in a wheelchair. They may need, some assistance getting around. And so, oftentimes these hospitals are trying to give good guidance to the families and these individuals about what they may need when they get home. And so building relationships with those types of organizations is a really big part of our business model, but that only works for the owner that's willing to go out and have those conversations. So, for our particular business, it's very much a community development type of play. It's not a business that's effectively run from, let's say, behind a desk or behind an iPad or a tablet. You got to get out and talk to people. And then the third thing that we look for specifically are team building skills. We need owners that can build a team. This is not a franchise of one, right? You'll build up a team of as many as maybe 15 to 20 people in your organization as you scale up. And so you've got to have that skill set where you can hire effectively, create the right team dynamic, the right culture for your organization so that you can hire high performing people and that it's an environment where high performing people want to be a part of the company. The thing about hiring high performing individuals is those are the people who have the most options. They don't have to work for you. They can work lots of places. And so if you want them to be part of your organization, you got to create the kind of environment that attracts and retain the highest performers in your market. So those are the key things that we look for.
Very well said, Mr. Dave. A common pitfall is falling in love with the product instead of a system. How can someone differentiate between being a passionate customer of a brand and being a suited operator of its franchise model?
Yeah, I mean, I see that happening in franchising a lot, and that it is true for us too. I would say less so much they would say they fall in love with it more so than they actually just find that they find themselves in a need situation. So they may have a family member that has a need. They're going through this process themselves, trying to find the right solution. And they figure out that in our industry, a lot of our competitors are just not good at serving the customer. So, they don't answer the phone. They're hard to get a hold of. They don't call you back right away. They may not have inventory available so that it may take, weeks or longer to get the right solution in place. And so a lot of times people find out about our business model and our industry because they've been through it themselves and they recognize pretty quickly that there's a gap there. They find that a lot of our competitors are just not, operating at a really high level when it comes to the customer experience. And so the light bulb goes off and says, well, here's a growing industry. People there's a lot of this need coming our way. And the companies in my market that I called aren't very good at it, right? So that seems to me like an opportunity. So in many cases, that's the way that, people find us and figure out that this could be a good business in their market is because they've had some kind of personal experience with it.
Mr. Dave, you often hear find a franchise that matches your passion. Is it the best advice? When might it be wiser to prioritize a proven system and a stable industry over a personal passion project?
Yeah, I think that's a slippery slope for a lot of people. A lot of people would say, well, I like to cook, so I should buy a food franchise. Well, liking to cook and running a food franchise have nothing to do with one another. And a lot of people sort of don't really think about that. They kind of think, well, if my passion is, sports or something, maybe I'll buy a sports franchise. But running a business and participating in your passion often are just two completely different things. And so certainly it's helpful if you have some affinity for the work that you do, right? I think a lot of people are attracted to our industry, for example, for reasons like the fact that, it's a business with a purpose. We help a lot of people and a lot of folks are looking for a business they feel like does some good in the community. And so that would be a passion sort of direction, I think that would be helpful in a business like ours. But saying, well, hey, I want to open a restaurant franchise because I like to cook is a common problem that a lot of people don't think about. There's There's a lot of books that sort of talk about that, dynamic around, finding the right franchise and matching not always necessarily what you're passionate about, but what are you good at? What are your skill sets? Because you could say, well, I'm passionate about helping people, but I don't want to go out and knock on doors and talk to people and do presentations. Well, okay, well, having a desire to help people is great. But if you're not willing to go out and knock on doors and build relationships with referral partners in our industry, you're going to struggle, because that's just really how our business works. So it really comes down to, what does it take to be successful in that business? And most of the time, having a passion for the product itself isn't all that's needed. That may be part of the picture, but it's usually not the complete picture for a franchise owner.
Mr. Dave, let's talk about the territory and market protection. How should a prospective franchisee critically assess what is being offered? What does a healthy, realistic territory look like versus a red flag?
Yeah, good question. Well, first I'll say this. I have found that most of the time, the success of a location in our business, it has a lot more to do with the capability of the owner than it does the territory. So usually, like for Liftology, we generally have pretty big territories in all but the biggest cities. Usually, we'll have one franchise owner that owns the whole market. So, for example, one of our first franchises is in San Antonio, Texas. They own all of San Antonio. So they've got plenty of room to move around and grow a real business. So in many cases, it's not so much a good or bad territory. It's an effective or ineffective owner that makes the difference. Now, there are some franchises where location really matters. If you're in a retail business where you've got to have people coming into your front door, and that's the main way that you get customers, location can be a make or break decision, right? You might have to pick just the right spot that has good traffic patterns and foot traffic or whatever the case may be in order to be successful. That's really not the case for Liftology. So most of our customers don't come to our offices. And if they do, they're willing to come find us, right? So most of the time, our offices are going to be in a flex space, light industrial park, those kind of facilities. And so it's really less important where you are located as opposed to how much you're willing to get out and build relationships in your community. So assessing a territory kind of, in our case anyway, it really comes down to like, what about, the housing stock, for example, the demographics of that territory. And we have all of that data that we can share with candidates. We've run full reports on all of the territories and have tons and tons of information, including, hospitals and rehab centers and the other types of places that we're likely to call on, all mapped out in a territory and so on. So those are the kind of things that we look at when we are evaluating a territory and the right fit for a candidate.
A right fit, definitely a right fit. So let's talk about the financial realities and reading between the lines, Mr. Dave. The financial performance representations is a goal if provided, right? How should someone interpret these numbers? What factors like geography, own operator versus manager run, or a local market cost must they apply to see if those numbers are realistic for their situation?
Yeah, well, the good news for our industry is that the price points for the products that we offer are fairly well normalized throughout the country. So we don't see big variances in price points, from market to market. So, if we're selling stair lift, for example, straight rail stair lifts, which is one of the number one products that we sell, they sell at about the same price in almost every market. So that doesn't really come into play as much. Again, almost always what it comes down to is really the effectiveness of the owner. Most of the markets and territories that we offer have plenty of opportunity in terms of the products and the need for what we bring to the table. And some people will say, well, what if there's a lot of competitors in that market? Is that good or bad? I actually kind of think it's generally better versus worse. If there's a lot of competitors in the market, that tends to mean there's a more robust market. If you're looking at an industry in a market where maybe in your territory there aren't any other competitors, well, that might mean there's no need. There might not be a need for what you're offering. So those are the kind of things you want to look at. You want a balance of, good, healthy competition, and then also, enough territory to be successful. But for the most part, in our industry, there aren't big variances in things like price points and that type of stuff. So, and then the same thing goes with your costs. The cost of acquiring the product is the same no matter where you are. So our suppliers, our product price, their supply wholesale prices are uniform. So everyone across the country, and that's not just true for us, that's true for all of their dealers, whether they're Liftology franchises or not, are getting uniform pricing. Now, I would say that we do get an advantage because of our relationships with our suppliers. We get deep discounts that other dealers may not get. But this discount applies to every Liftology franchise, no matter where you are.
So, Mr. Dave, as a franchisee, founder, and CEO, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, our goals are really pretty simple. We intend to build a national footprint throughout the U.S. of a relatively small number of high performing franchise owners. We expect that we'll get to 70 or 80 owners, and that will have us with pretty much national coverage around the country. We're not the type of franchise organization that will ever have 500 or 700 owners or anything like that. So it's a relatively small number. So our short term goals are to get to that 50, 60, 70 number of owners over the next 3 to 5 years, and then support the heck out of them. We put a lot of our resources into supporting our owners on marketing, training, operations. We bring systems into play that make it easier for them to run their businesses. We have a custom built operating system that's also a CRM called Blueprint that we use to run our business every day. Those are the types of things that really bring efficiency across the board to all of our franchise locations. So it really comes down to those two things. Let's get the 60 or 70 right owners in the system and provide all of the meaningful support that they need to maximize their opportunity in their market and really dominate their local marketplace.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Dave, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
I would say, figure out what you're good at. Like, find your zone of genius. I think everyone has, some particular thing that they can get really good at. And when you figure that out and you kind of make it your work life, then it becomes a lot easier to get up and go to work every day if you like what you do and you're good at it. So that's I guess my life advice to anybody would be figure out what your zone of genius is. What do you think you could potentially be the best in the world at, and turn that into the way that you make your living. And that could be owning and operating a small business or a franchise, or it could be any number of things.
Well, thank you for that empowering advice, Mr. Dave. And can you please recommend a book or books that influenced your journey?
Yeah, I would say anybody that's considering franchising, the best book that they can read is one called The Wealthy Franchisee by a gentleman by the name of Scott Greenberg. It's a really quick read. It's a good book, a lot of great stories, but it really does a nice job of explaining the difference in any franchise system between the people who do just okay and the ones that do really well. And it does a nice job of explaining why those two cohorts perform differently. And if you want to be one of the top 10 or 20% in your franchise network, what's that going to take? So that's a book that I highly recommend for anyone. And then the other book, which is kind of a fun book to read, is called Unreasonable Hospitality. I'm a big believer that you can win on the customer experience. And Unreasonable Hospitality is written by a gentleman that's been in the fine dining industry for his whole career. And he talks a lot about the lengths that the fine dining industry, when it's done right, will go to exceed their customer expectations every day. And I think if you can bring those kind of things to bear in your business, it can make a meaningful difference in the way that your business performs over time. So those are my two recommendations.
Yes, thank you for that recommended books, Mr. Dave. So let's start with the new conversation for franchisee. What is the one piece of a due diligence people consistently skip or rush that most often comes back to haunt them?
Validation calls. I think, calling other franchises that are already in the system, A lot of people will make a couple of calls and then they stop there. I'd call everybody. If there's 200 franchise, I mean, you don't have to make 200 calls, but call a reasonable sample size. So at least 10 or 15 franchises you should be talking to that are already in that system, and don't just try to talk to the ones that are at the top. Talk to the ones that are struggling. Talk to ones that have not done well. Maybe even some that might have failed and closed, and hear their stories. It might just be a education for you. Like here's, it's not to try to talk you out of it, but just what can you learn from the people that didn't do well in that franchise system. So, do a lot of due diligence, talk to a lot of people. Don't skip that part. A lot of franchise candidates do skip it because it takes time, and it is, it's a meaningful effort to go through and have that many conversations, but you'll learn so much from it that it's just worth doing.
So, Mr. Dave, imagine a candidate has narrowed it down into two finalists. What is your recommended final tiebreaker exercise to set the questions to reveal which franchise is the right long-term partner?
Yeah, great question. To me, it comes down to cultural fit. Get to know the people that you're going to work with. Many franchise agreements are 10 years long. That's how long ours are. And we see franchises that, renew and are in systems for many more than 10 years in many cases. And so these are long relationships. Get to know the people who you're going to be doing business with, and try to assess that, with the franchisor and just the way they are as a company and people, that it's a good cultural fit for you personally.
Mr. Dave, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, People, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry and third season, and of course my book 101 review in sixth season as well, comedy 101 third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well, geography 101 love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 are in fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in its fourth season, Spiritual Awakening 101, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, my Bible Verses 101 are my BB podcast. Well, listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Dave, the selection process is over. Based on your experience, what's the single most important mindset shift a new franchisee must take or must make on day one to successfully transition from being a savvy selector to an effective operator within the system you just bought into?
I think it's mostly that executive mindset. You're there to build a team, not do a job. And so, focus on building your team, high level revenue generation, and not being afraid to delegate key functions of the business to your team. We see too many franchise owners that feel like if they want something done right, they have to do it themselves. And that's a really tough way to scale a business, because there's only one of you and there's only so much you can do. So focus on team building, that executive mindset. Get other people around you to perform the day-to-day functions of the business so that you don't have to, so that you can go focus on scale. And, even every once in a while, take a day off and go on vacation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yes. So, Mr. Dave, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just go to liftology.com. You can reach out to us from our website, and we're happy to chat with you about any questions that you have.
Yes, people, let's connect with Mr. Dave if you are aiming to have a business right now, especially if you want to do the franchise. And I have one more question, Mr. Dave, before I will let you go. Let's discuss the innovation. How do you gauge a franchisor's approach to system evaluation? What questions reveal whether you're adaptively leveraging franchisee feedback, or is it stubbornly top down?
Yeah, I think focusing on what types of systems they have in place and how customized are those systems for that franchise, I think that really matters. If you're just using the same kind of systems that all of your competitors have, then you can't really turn that into a competitive advantage. So I'm thinking about, systems like the way that the operating systems that you may use to run your business day to day. How developed are they? How much customization is there from the franchisor that gives you an advantage in your marketplace? So that's one key thing.
So, Mr. Dave Pazgan, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on.
What can people see you soon?
I'm sorry?